Here is an update on the 3D printing 4000 series cars that I've been working on. First up is my first 3D print attempt of the number one end. As you can see, it turned out pretty good. Got all the necessary details like the end marker lights. The anti-climber is a bit tall at 9 scale inches, but again I've captured the overall look of the end. The rivet detail is a little on the light side. These particular rivets are 1/2 inch tall in O scale, but again it captures the overall look. Unfortunately, I did happen to drop this particular piece on the floor and I chipped the end. Second up is my second version of the number one end. For this particular end I went with a modernized car with the safety windows and gaskets, but again I've got the end marker lights, the trolley pole retriever, the anti-climber I've reduced in size to 6 scale inches, and I also have the tread here on the anti-climber along with the little ramp up to the door. Again, it captures the overall proportions of the end pretty well. It is a scale 8 feet 6 inches tall and also scale in height. Last I have is the number two end. This has the door controls, the conductor steps so they can stand in between the cars, a trolley retriever, and again the scale anti-climber. These turned out pretty well, and they're printed from Frosted Ultra Detail FUD from Shapeways. Next I have is the side. Again, this is the modernized version with the oval windows and gaskets and a little more modern door. This particular piece was printed off of Shapeways with the Ultra Detail, so one step below FUD. So what you can actually see is that on the field of these panels, the rivets were too shallow in height or too small for the material and do not show up. This particular piece has also been painted a few times in strips, that's why it's kind of an unusual color. But again, what it does, it shows that the Ultra Detail can actually capture the overall proportions of the car. Turned out pretty well. In certain areas, the rivet detail does come out. On this belt rail, these rivets again are 1/2 inch high in O scale, and you can barely see them, but they do turn out. On some of the windows, you can see the gaskets around the safety windows here, the standee windows, and that does turn out. This particular piece is almost 6 inches thick in O scale. Actually, it's about 90 thousandths thick. Then my next production model will be will be about 60,000, so it'll be a lot thinner. The plan is that a printout of each particular side will be done, and then you'll take the particular pieces and put them together, thereby making a car. And then also the roof will be 3D printed. As you can see, this particular side again is just a sample piece. So there's some errors in this particular one. These oval windows are a little too wide, and some of the window detail down here is incorrect. This particular window is too tall, this particular window is too narrow, and again these particular windows are too wide, but again that will be corrected in the final model. And again, pardon the rough surface. Coming from the actual Shapeways, the lines of the printing process are pretty apparent, so what you need to do is take some Rust-Oleum automobile primer, the gray primer, and use it almost as a sanding primer. Prime the piece and come back with some fine grit sandpaper and sand that down. And the problem is on this one I managed to sand off a lot of the rivet detail. There's supposed to be a line of rivets along the bottom here, and along each window there's supposed to be a line of rivets, so it's kind of tough to see. But underneath the door you can see a little bit more how the rivets do actually kind of appear. There's a little panel here that has some rivet detail on there. But again, the plan will be is that you will take a printout of each and get 2 printouts to the side and then come back and then build a car in the old Walther style where you've got 2 ends, 2 sides, and a roof. And eventually I will make an actual floor that will accept, don't know yet, but either Q car or current line trucks. That is the plan. But again, this is more as a test to show on whether or not 3D printing can actually be used to make an acceptable O-scale car. But Get my hand out of the way so you can see kind of a little better in terms of what the final product will be looking like. Next up, I have some L columns that were done in this Metropolitan style. I have two different printouts here. Just trying a little bit of experimenting in terms of how thick I want to make the lattice. But what it is these are the L columns in the style of the Met. They've got the lattice and a curved top. So what I did here was, you can see, got the line of rivet detail up the side. This particular one, I've got a ridge here that will be removed that is not prototypical. I've got the rivets connecting the lattice pieces and then the base rivets. This one I think is just a little too thin in terms of the lattice style. So I made a second print that I thickened up the lattice a little bit. Again, I've still got the same rivet details and the rivet details on the base. The plan is that we'll have a filler piece, and you'll take two columns and make a sandwich, so to speak, that will hold up your track. Again, you'll get a nice see-through pattern on the columns. Along with that, not being 3D printed, will actually be molds cast of actual Met style girders that have full rivet details. So the plan is taking your columns along with your girders, and again I have a girder that will be for the outside. This is the outside pattern girder, and the inside pattern girder. Make a mold using resin, make a casting. You'll be able to sandwich together, thereby making a girder. And then from that you can then build up your L structure. Now these do have, just like the 3D printouts, I have been able to capture rivet detail of the panels, the joints, and along the various areas here. This particular is a cross piece that is more in the style of the Northwestern, but again I get the general idea in the fact that what you'll be doing is making a casting of this cross piece, and then I can take my girders and slot my girders in that little piece there and help speed up construction. So in addition to these Met style girders, I've also made girders for the Northwestern style of girder. So what I'm doing here is matching the pattern of these vertical stiffeners. Again, the appropriate rivet detail around the edges and a rivet detail going down the center, because again with that you have a corresponding back side of the girder. So these rivets here will obviously correspond with this vertical stiffener. Make a mold out of each side, make a casting, and sandwich the two together, thereby making a fully detailed O-scale L girder. Back here in the corner is my new expansion. It's basically a removable section about 5 feet long that spans across the water softener and escape window, which will not be escaping on it because we track it away, but again it is removable. But this is a new style of construction that I showed before of the castings for the girders. If I can zoom in here, I can hopefully be able to capture this. So you can see these particular girders now have rivet details. And these are castings. Here's a close-up on the detail on one of the columns. Again, these columns are in the northwestern style. So I do have some rivet detail on the base and on the inside of the columns. Still got a little bit of sanding to do there, but the height of these columns is a little higher than I wanted to go. But since the benchwork drops down a little bit, I had to increase the height. Again, I do not have the curved angle supports that will be going there. I'll show those in a second. Here's a prototype of the angle bracket that I'll be attaching on the columns. So this will be going there. And again, this one's just a prototype. I'll actually be making a 3D model of this and sending it up to Shapeways so I can make a casting. These are a bit tedious because they'll be going on every column will have the corner brace on there. So to make a casting of these is key. Making these one by one is just way too much work. Here's a view down the new track. Notice I got some 2-rail here. That might be a change up I may be making shortly, so I'll stay tuned for that. But again, some kind of the detail I add. As you can see, both sides of the columns are detailed, so you got all the rivet detail there. Add some plastruct bracing there. The cross girders here are basic. I'll show the other side, but I do have the little flanges rivet detail on that. Here on the other side, you can see I do actually have some additional rivet details up and down on there, little pieces there. But again, I'm leaving enough room here that I can put a small island station in the middle there. So what this does is it'll travel down through the Sheridan Road curve to the Sheridan station. This here is an apartment building that is kind of in a state of progress, still work in progress, but it's made out of N-scale Architect O-scale brick sheets and just evergreen styrene shapes. Got a little bit of a detail on the door there. Pretty basic, nothing too fancy. Just again, trying to capture the look. Got some brick relief here, recessed a row, and the overall. Just trying to get that capture a 6 flat, so to speak. So you know, 3 apartments on each side for a 6 total. Again, still in work in progress. As you'll see, there's a gigantic empty space behind there. Eventually I'll be filling out this particular building. The track will flow from around the curve down to this new removable section. Again, I've left enough space, or made a space in between the tracks where I can actually stick in a small island platform station. There really hasn't been any work done on the Sheridan Road station. But the most I want to do here is replace the CTA Rapid Transit 19 minutes to loop sign. I think I can get that looking a little better. But right now, the scene is pretty much complete to a point where it's acceptable. There's not a whole lot I want to do to particularly improve it at this time. Again, it's pretty much done. Eventually I'll be replacing the station canopy. Not particularly happy with how that turned out. That was my first attempt. And again, I'll need some additional detail at the station. I'll need the rotogate exit, some signage. But again, that's just details that can wait until some other projects are done. The stair detail underneath the station is pretty basic. There's not a lot to that particular staircase. Again, when I find time, I'll go ahead and figure out a way to improve that. Also add some fencing. Obviously right now there's no reason to actually go on and pay for the train because you can just basically walk from the alley. So again, I need some fencing and some exit roto gates. Again, as I mentioned before, I do want to replace the station canopy. That was one of my first attempts at scratch building, and it could definitely use a little bit of updating. Moving on from the Sheridan Road station here, coming a little crossover, but these buildings back here are just paper models right now, or paper printouts taped onto MDF cores, so it's just kind of a filler at this point to act as, you know, a quick and easy backdrop. Eventually I'll be replacing those with actual styrene models, but right now they're just kind of a convenient, quick and easy modeling tool. This particular building is actually made out of brick pattern sheets with my Uptown National Bank sign. Again, just some type of warehouse, generic warehouse. Got the small auto repair shop here. Get your car fixed. Just, you know, a little filler. Take up some space on the layout. Put some kids back there moping about, and another dumpster that needs to be painted, which leads that back building there is just a test of some painting techniques and some window details. I'll eventually be taking that out, and leads into the residential area. Not a lot to be done here at the residential section of the layout. The 2 flats and apartment buildings in the back are done. Again, if anything, I might come and just add a little bit more mortar detail on the buildings. Right now it's kind of a straight paint. I didn't really do the mortar technique that I do, which is using drywall joint compound. But again, it's done to a point that it's at least acceptable. Here in the Cabrini Green area, basically I've just added some ground cover to the ground behind the tracks. Other than that, not a lot has been done. Again, the paper Cabrini Green still stands. It eventually replaced with a scratch-built building. Right now that is just paper printed and glued onto MDF. But again, I did add some little bit of grass and whatnot to the behind the tracks there. Basketball game still goes on, and added a fellow jogging on the street, and added a Chicago Park District sign to the playground. Plan here is to make a typical Chicago back alley. Right now it's still in the state of incompletion. One of the dumpsters is still unpainted. A little bit of graffiti there. Here at the Southport station, I've just been basically working on some of the buildings that are on the right hand side of the street here. Been detailing the Elevated Records Chicago record and tape store. So you can get in there and zoom in and see some of the record labels that are for sale. Some of my more favorite bands. Of course, being near an L station, you have to have a liquor store, so next to that I have the L Stop Liquor and Food, open 24 hours. That is tucked underneath the tracks in typical Chicago L style. They like to sell or lease some of the land underneath the L, make a little bit of extra money. And then next to that will be the Dill Pickle Delicatessen and Restaurant. So those make up the businesses that sit on the right hand side of the street. Basically I'm using it as a backdrop for the tracks, give it a little bit more of an urban feel. On the left side of the tracks I've got basically a half a building, actually just a sliver that will be, haven't decided what that's going to be yet. The eventual station house that's still under construction, and then an apartment building in the back. Here's a view of the whole station. You can see that sliver building that has a fence there to keep folks from climbing from the stairs onto the roof of the building. A new dumpster that still needs to be painted. Basically the stairs at this point are just a mock-up to get the dimensions that I can actually send off to have those laser cut. And then the station platforms are basically done. I still do need to add some lights, but for the most part it's pretty done. Back along the back wall I started making a small apartment building with typical Chicago porch on the back there. Trying to make it as rickety as possible. Usually get a couple porch collapses a year due to too many people partying. And just some background buildings that just act as more of a backdrop to the station. But again, I've added to the station. I've got the station signs, various platform signs, with appropriate 80s advertisements, park bench, only one bench, trains come too often, phone booth, a couple more ads, weary travelers. Here's a view of the whole layout. Travel through the Southport station, down past Cabrini Green in the park, through the nice residential area of 2 flats, by the small curve there, then through the Sheridan station and around the Sheridan curve or the fuse box curve. Continuing from the Sheridan station, you'll travel through a yet-to-be-named station, past the egress window, water softener, furnace, water heater, back along that back wall, merging out the other end to which will eventually be a new expansion that will have a terminal in the manner of Logan Square. Again, right now it's just a dumping ground for all the debris and modeling stuff. I was able to move up some of my signs, but I still need to paint that wall a blue color for a backdrop. And the last thing I wanted to talk about are some of the challenges you can face while making a layout in a cramped space. Here at my Sheridan Road station, this is on a piece of benchwork about 30 inches wide. It's good enough to capture the general scene. But above it I have a shelf that holds the cable router or cable modem and then router. Well, not very prototypical. It's a necessary evil to have. More importantly though, and for entertainment factor, right behind my Sheridan Road curve I actually do have a TV set. I find it very therapeutic to put on a ball game, or in this case actually a race, to actually have something going on while you're working. Down below I have a cluttered piece of benchwork that actually holds my iPod dock for listening to music or podcasts. All this benchwork and scenery is removable because right behind it I have to deal with 2 fuse panels. Luckily, I've devised a system where, well, the track is removable, but it is somewhat time consuming, so I've taken the hinges off the fuse panel door and replaced it with magnets, so if I need to get access, I just move the magnets and are able to gain access to the fuse panel. Next to it is the sub panel for the stuff I have in the garage of the air compressor and welder, and luckily that does not have a cover on it, so no problems there. But again, all this benchwork is removable if need be, because there is actually also a sump pump buried somewhere back there. Eventually I'll build up some type of small backdrops and buildings to camouflage most of this, but for now it can mostly at least just get the track through. Moving on is to my small suspended section of expansion here that will hold another station. Luckily this cleared the water softener there. It does block the egress window, but be that as it may, I don't plan on egressing out of that window anytime soon. I was able to route the pipework for the water softener away from the benchwork, so I was able to keep that there. Eventually I'll be making some type of backdrop here because the transit map doesn't make for a very scenic backdrop, but it's appropriate at least. And again, back there is a water heater in the furnace. So I'm able to clear everything there again. I'm able to squeeze in enough of the layout and make enough of an expansion that it's at least feasible. It doesn't look the best, but it gets the job done.